The fluorescent hospital lights burned my eyes as I clutched my stomach, feeling the sharp cramps that had brought me here. The heart monitor beeped steadily beside me while Dr. Patterson reviewed my chart with a gentle smile. "The pregnancy is viable, Miss Banks," she said softly. "But you need to reduce stress. This spotting is a warning sign." Relief flooded through me, but when I turned to share the moment with Logan, his face looked carved from stone. His jaw was tight, his eyes cold and distant. This wasn't the man who'd proposed to me under twinkling lights just a year ago. "You really went through with it," he said, his voice low and venomous. He pulled his hand away from mine like I'd burned him. "You actually thought keeping this baby would make me stay?" My breath caught in my throat. The room suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. "Logan, please." "No." He stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. "You made your choice, Chloe. Now you'll live with the consequences. I swear, I'll teach you a lesson you'll never forget." He walked out without looking back, leaving me alone with the echo of his threat and the steady beep of my baby's heartbeat. My name is Chloe Banks, and 6 months ago, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I remember the proposal like it happened yesterday. Logan had taken me to the pier at sunset, got down on one knee with a ring that caught the golden light perfectly. "Marry me, Chloe," he'd said with that devastating smile. "Let me spend forever making you happy." My mother had cried tears of joy. My father had shaken Logan's hand with genuine pride, calling him son for the first time. My younger sister, Emma, had squealed and immediately started planning the bachelorette party. Everyone loved Logan Reed, the finance professional with the perfect smile, steady job, and respectable family. "You're so lucky," my friends would say. "He's perfect." And I'd believed them. I'd believed him. Logan was 29, established, responsible. He opened doors, remembered anniversaries, and charmed everyone he met. My life felt like it was finally falling into place after years of struggling through college and working multiple part-time jobs. But perfection, I was learning, is often just a carefully maintained illusion. The cracks had been there all along, so small I'd convinced myself they were normal. That's what love does sometimes, it makes you excuse the inexcusable until it's too late. The first real crack appeared 3 months into our engagement. We were at dinner with his colleagues when I mentioned applying for graduate school to finish my teaching degree. Logan's fork paused halfway to his mouth. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Grad school," he said lightly, but I caught the edge in his voice. "Sweetheart, we're planning a wedding. Don't you think that's enough on your plate?" His boss laughed. "Smart man. My wife tried juggling too much early on. Nearly drove us both crazy." I'd forced a smile, but the conversation bothered me all week. When I brought it up again, Logan was more direct. "You don't need more student loans, Chloe. We'll be starting a family soon. Focus on our future, not some degree you might never use." He started managing our finances after that, insisting it made sense since he worked in finance. He created a joint savings account and convinced me to deposit my paycheck there. "It's what couples do," he'd said. "We're building something together." Then came the comments about my clothes, my friends, my schedule. Small adjustments, he called them. Compromises. But each one felt like losing a piece of myself I couldn't quite name. I discovered I was pregnant on a Tuesday morning in March. 2 pink lines appeared on the test, and my hand shook so badly I nearly dropped it. Fear and joy crashed together in my chest. We hadn't planned this, but wasn't this what we wanted eventually? I spent the whole day rehearsing how to tell him. I bought his favorite dinner ingredients, lit candles, and waited for him to come home. My heart raced with nervous excitement. When Logan walked in and saw the setup, he smiled. "What's the occasion?" I handed him the test, unable to stop grinning. "We're having a baby." The smile died instantly. His face went blank, then cold, then something worse, disgusted. "You're pregnant," he said slowly, like the words tasted bitter. "I know it's unexpected, but..." Did you do this on purpose? His voice turned sharp. Were you trying to trap me? The accusation hit like a slap. What? No. Logan, I thought you'd be happy. Happy? He laughed, harsh and hollow. Chloe, we're not ready for this. I'm not ready for this. You need to fix it. Fix it? My voice came out small. Yes. Fix it. Schedule an appointment. This doesn't have to be a problem. He left me standing there, alone with the candles burning down and my future crumbling around me. For 3 days, Logan barely spoke to me. He slept in the guest room and left for work before I woke up. When he finally sat me down on Saturday morning, his voice was eerily calm. I've thought about this, he said, like we were discussing a business transaction. If you keep this baby, I'm leaving. That's not a threat, it's a fact. I'm not ready to be a father, and I won't be forced into it. My hands instinctively moved to my stomach. Logan, please. We can figure this out together. There's nothing to figure out. You have a choice. Make it. The ultimatum hung between us like a blade. That night, he made another call, to my parents. I didn't know about it until the next morning when my phone exploded with messages. My mother, we need to talk. Now. My father, what were you thinking? Emma, Mom is furious. What did you do? I called home, confused and hurt. My mother answered on the first ring. How could you do this, Chloe, she said without preamble. Logan called us, devastated. He says you're trying to trap him with a pregnancy. The betrayal stole my breath. That's not, Mom, it's not like that, don't come home until you've sorted this mess out. You've embarrassed us. The line went dead. I moved out that week with 2 suitcases, my laptop, and what little savings I'd kept in my personal account, about $1,500. Logan watched me pack with his arms crossed, saying nothing. The engagement ring sat on his dresser where I'd left it. The studio apartment I found was in the older part of town, small and drafty, but it was mine. The first night, I sat on the bare floor with my back against the wall and cried until I had nothing left. My phone stayed silent except for a single text from my mother, "You made your bed, Chloe. Now lie in it." Even Emma had stopped responding to my messages. Logan had painted me as unstable, manipulative, desperate. And my family had believed him without asking for my side. I placed my hand on my stomach, feeling nothing yet but knowing life was growing there. I'll keep us safe, I whispered into the empty room. I promise you that. The heartbreak was overwhelming, but beneath it, something else was forming. Not anger yet, that would come later. This was something colder, harder. Determination. I would survive this. We would survive this. And someday, somehow, they'd all see the truth. 3 weeks after I moved out, I logged into our joint savings account to transfer my portion of the rent money I'd contributed. The balance showed 0. My heart stopped. I refreshed the page. Still 0. Months of careful saving, gone. I called the bank, my hands shaking. The representative was sympathetic but firm. The withdrawal was made by the primary account holder, Mr. Reed. It was a mutual fund, so legally. I hung up. He'd taken everything. Every cent I'd contributed, every paycheck I'd deposited, every bit of security I'd built. He'd left me pregnant, alone, and broke. That night, I made myself open social media despite knowing it would hurt. And there he was, Logan, tagged in photos at some upscale bar, his arm around a blonde woman in a designer dress. He was laughing, carefree, like he hadn't just destroyed my life. The caption read, "New beginnings with this amazing guy. #blessed. I closed my laptop slowly, carefully, as if sudden movement might shatter what was left of my composure. The tears didn't come this time. Instead, something sharp and clear crystallized in my chest. This wasn't just about survival anymore. I opened a new folder on my desktop and titled it simply, Evidence. I fainted on the bus 2 weeks later, exhausted from working double shifts at a coffee shop. When I came to, a woman with kind eyes was fanning me with a newspaper while other passengers looked on with concern. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" she asked gently. I nodded, too weak to lie. "I'm Patricia," she said. "I run the Riverside Women's Center. We help women in situations like yours." She gave me her card and made me promise to call. That call saved my life. The center became my sanctuary. They offered parenting classes, job placement help, and counseling. Patricia introduced me to other single mothers who understood what I was going through. Women who'd been where I was and survived. "You're stronger than you think," Patricia told me during one of our sessions. "Don't let him take that from you." With the center's help, I enrolled in night classes to finish my degree. They provided childcare vouchers, connected me with a scholarship program, and slowly, painfully, I started to rebuild. My baby bump was showing now. Every time I felt movement, I remembered why I was fighting. Not for revenge, not yet. Just to prove I could stand on my own. Aiden James Banks was born on a snowy December morning after 19 hours of labor. I had no family in the waiting room, no partner holding my hand. Just Patricia, who'd driven me to the hospital at 3 in the morning and stayed through every contraction. When they placed him in my arms, his tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and the world stopped. He had dark hair and serious eyes, and he was the most perfect thing I'd ever seen. "Hello, sweetheart," I whispered through tears. "I'm your mom. I'm going to give you everything." The exhaustion, the pain, the loneliness, it all dissolved into pure, fierce love. Logan didn't matter anymore. My parents' rejection didn't matter. Nothing mattered except this tiny human who needed me. "You're my reason now," I said, kissing his forehead. "You're my everything." That night, alone in my hospital room with Aiden sleeping in the bassinet beside me, I made a silent vow. I would give him stability, safety, love. I would show him that broken families could still raise whole children. And if anyone ever tried to hurt him the way I'd been hurt, they'd learn exactly what a mother's love could do. When Aiden was 3 months old, I lost my part-time teaching position at the community center. The director called me into her office with an apologetic expression. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. We've received complaints from parents about your situation." "My situation?" I kept my voice level despite the rage building in my chest. "They've heard rumors. About your ex-fiancé, about the baby. Some parents don't feel comfortable with an unwed mother teaching their children?" She had the decency to look ashamed. "It's not my decision. The board voted." I knew exactly where those rumors had come from. Logan had been busy spreading his version of events around our small town. I was the unstable ex who'd tried to trap him. The baby probably wasn't even his. I was desperate, unhinged, a cautionary tale. But instead of confronting him, I went home and opened my evidence folder. I'd been collecting everything. Screenshots of his social media posts bragging about expensive dinners during the months he claimed we were struggling financially. Bank statements showing his withdrawals from our joint account. Text messages where he'd admitted the baby was his before deciding to deny it. Every lie he told, I documented. Silently. Carefully. Patiently. Revenge, I was learning, requires preparation. The Riverside Women's Center helped me secure a full scholarship to finish my degree in social work and advocacy. Patricia wrote a glowing recommendation letter, and suddenly doors I thought were closed forever started opening. I took classes online while Aiden napped, studying case law and family advocacy, learning about the systems designed to help women like me. The work was hard, but every time I wanted to quit, I looked at my son and found the strength to keep going. Aiden started crawling, then pulling himself up on furniture. His first word was "Mama," and I cried like I'd won the lottery. These small victories felt enormous. My apartment was still tiny, but I'd made it warm. Pictures of Aiden covered the walls. His toys filled the corners. We were building a life, just the two of us. Some nights, after putting him to bed, I'd sit on the couch and let myself feel the anger I'd been suppressing. Not the hot, explosive kind, something colder. More calculating. I didn't want to scream at Logan or expose him publicly. I wanted something better. I wanted justice. And I was willing to wait as long as it took. 2 years after I left, an envelope arrived with my mother's handwriting. Inside was a wedding invitation and a short note. Logan's getting married to Victoria Ashford. You should really move on too, Chloe. This bitterness isn't healthy. The invitation was expensive, embossed with gold lettering. The venue was the country club where Logan and I were supposed to have married. The bride was Victoria Ashford, the daughter of Congressman Ashford, a woman whose family had money and connections. I stared at the invitation for a long time. Then I noticed something interesting in the engagement photo. Behind the happy couple was a familiar logo, Reed & Associates Financial Services, the firm Logan now worked for. The same firm that had recently partnered with the nonprofit where I'd just accepted a job as a legal advocate. My new role involved reviewing financial discrepancies in partnership accounts to ensure donor funds were properly allocated. It was boring work, mostly. Routine audits, paper trails, compliance checks. But as I looked at that invitation, at Logan's smug smile and his wealthy fiancé, something clicked into place. I pulled up my work files and started searching for Reed & Associates. What I found made my pulse spike. There were irregularities. Small ones, carefully hidden. But they were there. The first discrepancy I found was subtle, a donation that didn't quite match the reported allocation. The numbers were off by a few $1,000s, easy to miss unless you were looking carefully. I was looking very carefully. I spent my lunch breaks cross-referencing accounts, tracking payments, following digital breadcrumbs. What emerged was a pattern of small diversions, money meant for charitable causes being funneled through shell accounts before ending up somewhere else. And Logan's signature was on half the authorization forms. My hands shook as I compiled the evidence. This wasn't about our failed relationship. This was fraud. Real, prosecutable fraud that hurt vulnerable people who needed help. I could have gone straight to the authorities. Part of me wanted to. But I'd learned patience over the past 2 years. I'd learned that rushing leads to mistakes, and mistakes let guilty people walk free. Instead, I scheduled a meeting with my supervisor, Brenda Hartley, and presented my findings as routine audit concerns. I kept my tone professional, detached. Just another day doing due diligence. This needs to go to the legal team, Brenda said, frowning at the documents. Good catch, Chloe. I nodded, keeping my expression neutral while my heart raced. The wheels were in motion. The legal team launched a quiet investigation. I stayed in the background, submitting documents when requested, answering questions without revealing my connection to Logan. Nobody needed to know we had history. That would only complicate things. I watched from a distance as lawyers requested more files, as auditors started asking questions, as the investigation grew from routine review to serious inquiry. Logan had no idea I was involved. To him, I was still the broken ex-girlfriend he'd discarded years ago, probably still struggling, definitely not a threat. That was his first mistake, assuming I'd stayed broken. At home, Aiden had started preschool. He was bright, curious, and loving. Every night, I'd read him stories and tuck him in, and he'd wrap his arms around my neck and say, "Love you, Mama." Those moments reminded me why I was doing this. Not for revenge, though that would be sweet, but for justice. For every woman Logan had lied to, every person he'd stolen from, every vulnerable family whose donations he'd diverted. He thought he'd taught me a lesson about knowing my place. He was about to learn one about consequences. The nonprofit hosted a partnership gala in September, and Reed & Associates was a major sponsor. Which meant Logan would be there with Victoria, playing the part of the successful businessman and devoted fiancé. I almost didn't attend. But Brenda insisted. I'd been instrumental in securing several new grants, and my work deserved recognition. So I bought a simple black dress, arranged for Patricia to watch Aiden, and walked into that ballroom with my head high. Logan spotted me within minutes. I watched his face go from confusion to recognition to shock. He excused himself from Victoria and made his way across the room, weaving through conversations until he stood in front of me. Chloe? He looked genuinely stunned. What are you doing here? I work here, I said calmly. I'm a legal advocate. And you? His jaw tightened. We're a corporate sponsor. Right. Reed and Associates. I've seen your name on quite a few documents recently. Something flickered in his eyes, uncertainty, maybe fear. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I smiled. Just making conversation. Congratulations on your engagement, by the way. I walked away, leaving him standing there, and I knew he was watching me with a knot of worry forming in his chest. Good. Let him wonder. He cornered me outside during the cocktail hour, away from the crowd. What game are you playing, Chloe? No game, I said evenly. I'm just doing my job. Your job. He laughed bitterly. You really expect me to believe it's coincidence you're working here? That you're not trying to. To what? Get revenge? I turned to face him fully. Logan, I have a son to raise and a career to build. I don't have time for whatever paranoia you're dealing with. If you try to interfere with my business, you'll what? I interrupted. Threaten me again? Make my life hell? Been there. Survived it. And you know what I learned? He said nothing, just stared at me with barely concealed anger. I learned that bullies only have power when you're afraid of them. I stepped closer, my voice dropping. I'm not afraid of you anymore, Logan. I haven't been for a long time. I walked back inside, leaving him in the shadows, and for the first time in years, I felt completely, utterly free. Whatever happened next, I'd already won the only battle that mattered. I'd won myself back. The internal audit intensified. The legal team brought in external auditors, and suddenly Reed and Associates was under serious scrutiny. I continued my work quietly, forwarding relevant documents when requested, maintaining professional distance. Logan started showing cracks. I heard through office gossip that he'd been making aggressive calls to board members, offering explanations for discrepancies that didn't quite add up. He tried to blame accounting errors, software glitches, miscommunications. But the evidence was too clear, too consistent. This wasn't accidental. It was systematic. One afternoon, Brenda called me into her office with a strange expression. Chloe, I need to ask you something. Did you know Logan Reed before this investigation? My heart stopped, but I kept my face neutral. We were engaged once. Years ago. It ended badly. And you didn't think that was relevant? The audit findings are based on facts, not feelings. His signature is on those documents whether I know him or not. She studied me for a long moment, then nodded. You're right. But going forward, you'll need to recuse yourself from anything directly involving his case. Conflict of interest. Of course. I'd already done what needed to be done anyway. The rest would take care of itself. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. A local journalist published an investigative piece titled Charity Funds Diverted, Financial Firm Under Investigation for Misuse of Nonprofit Donations. Logan's name was right there in black and white, along with details about the shell accounts, the falsified reports, the money that should have gone to help struggling families but ended up padding his lifestyle. By noon, it was everywhere. Social media exploded. The news stations picked it up. Victoria's father released a statement distancing himself from Logan and announcing his daughter's engagement was under review. Logan's carefully constructed world was crumbling in real time. That evening, my phone buzzed with a voicemail from a number I hadn't heard from in 2 years. I almost deleted it without listening. But curiosity won. you think this is over? Logan's voice was ragged, desperate. You think you've won? This is going to destroy you too, Chloe. I'll make sure everyone knows you're behind this. You'll regret. I deleted it mid-threat. His words had no power anymore. He was flailing, drowning, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction watching him sink. I picked up Aiden from preschool that afternoon, and he showed me a painting he'd made, messy and bright and perfect. It's us, Mama, he said proudly. It's beautiful, baby, I said, meaning it completely. 2 weeks after the article published, I received a formal subpoena to appear as a witness in the investigation. Not as an accuser, just as the analyst who'd identified the initial discrepancies during routine audits. I arrived at the courthouse in a navy suit, professional and composed. Logan was already there with his attorney, looking haggard. His expensive clothes couldn't hide the exhaustion in his face, the fear in his eyes. When our eyes met across the corridor, he looked away first. The hearing was procedural, mostly. I answered questions about the audit process, explained how I'd found the irregularities, confirmed the authenticity of documents. I never mentioned our history. Never let emotion color my testimony. Just facts, delivered calmly and clearly. Logan's attorney tried to rattle me during cross-examination, suggesting I had ulterior motives, that I was biased. But the evidence spoke for itself, numbers don't lie, and his client's signature was on documents that couldn't be explained away. When I stepped down from the witness stand, I felt lighter than I had in years. I'd done everything right. Stayed professional, stayed honest, stayed strong. The truth was doing the heavy lifting now. I didn't need revenge, justice was handling it just fine. Over the following months, Logan's life collapsed in spectacular fashion. The firm fired him immediately. Victoria's engagement announcement was quietly deleted from social media, replaced by a statement about moving forward separately. Criminal charges were filed: fraud, embezzlement, falsification of records. The prosecutors had everything they needed, most of it bearing Logan's own signature. His parents, who'd always been so proud of their successful son, stopped appearing at public events. Friends distanced themselves. The social standing he'd valued so highly evaporated overnight. Meanwhile, I was promoted at work. My dedication and integrity had been noticed. Brenda recommended me for a leadership position in the advocacy department, working directly with families in crisis. You understand what they're going through, she said. That makes you invaluable. I thought about that, how my worst experience had become my greatest qualification. How Logan's cruelty had accidentally pushed me toward a career where I could actually make a difference. Aiden was thriving in preschool, making friends, learning to read. We'd moved to a better apartment with actual bedrooms. Life wasn't perfect, but it was ours, and it was good. Everything Logan had tried to destroy had been rebuilt stronger. The media coverage intensified when cameras caught Logan outside the courthouse after a particularly damaging testimony session. He looked disheveled, desperate, and when a reporter asked for comment, he snapped. "This is all because of my vindictive ex-girlfriend," he shouted. "She's been sabotaging me from the start. Chloe Banks has orchestrated this entire thing because I wouldn't marry her." The footage went viral, but not for the reasons he hoped. Comments flooded in: "So the evidence of your signature on fraudulent documents is somehow her fault? Imagine stealing from charities and blaming your ex. This is what accountability looks like when you're not used to it." His attempt to paint himself as the victim backfired spectacularly. People saw through it, a powerful man trying to blame a woman for his own crimes. Patricia texted me the video with a simple message: "Karma is beautiful." I didn't respond publicly. Didn't give interviews or statements. Didn't need to. The truth had always been on my side. I'd just waited patiently for everyone else to see it. That night, I tucked Aiden into bed and he asked, "Mama, are you happy?" "Yes, baby," I said honestly. "I really, really am." My mother showed up at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon without warning. I opened the door to find her standing there with tears in her eyes, looking older and more fragile than I remembered. "Chloe," she said quietly. "Can we talk?" I hesitated, then stepped aside to let her in. Aiden was at a playdate, so we had privacy. She looked around the apartment, taking in the photos on the walls, the toys in the corner, the life I'd built without her. "I was wrong," she said finally. "About Logan. About you. About everything." "I know." We believed him. He was so convincing, and we didn't ask for your side. "No," I agreed. "You didn't." She sat heavily on the couch. "When I saw the news, saw what he really was. Chloe, I'm so sorry. I failed you when you needed me most." I sat across from her, feeling a complicated mix of vindication and grief. "You did. And that hurt worse than anything Logan did to me. Can you forgive me?" I took a breath. "Eventually, maybe. But not today. You missed 2 years of your grandson's life because you chose to believe a liar over your own daughter. That doesn't just disappear because now the whole world knows the truth." She nodded, tears falling. "I understand. It wasn't closure, but it was a start." 6 months later, the nonprofit hosted its annual fundraising gala. This time, I wasn't just attending, I was one of the keynote speakers. I stood backstage in a burgundy dress, holding my notes with slightly shaking hands. Patricia squeezed my shoulder encouragingly. "You've got this," she said. When my name was called, I walked onto that stage with my head high. The ballroom was full of donors, advocates, and families we'd helped. And somewhere in the back, serving drinks as part of his court-mandated community service, was Logan. I didn't mention him by name. Didn't need to. 2 years ago, I was alone, pregnant, and broke, I began. I'd been abandoned by my partner and rejected by my family. I thought my life was over. But organizations like this one gave me hope when I had none. They showed me that being knocked down doesn't mean staying down. I talked about resilience. About single mothers who were treated like cautionary tales instead of the warriors they were. About how judgment often comes from people who've never faced real hardship. Today, I have a beautiful son, a career I love, and a future I built myself. The man who swore to teach me a lesson for keeping my baby learned one instead, that you can't destroy someone who refuses to stay broken. The applause was thunderous. I stepped off that stage feeling 10 feet tall. After the speeches, I found Logan near the kitchen entrance, still in his server's uniform. He looked up when I approached, something broken in his eyes. "Congratulations," he said quietly. "You won." "This was never about winning, Logan. Wasn't it?" He laughed bitterly. "You destroyed everything I built." "No," I corrected. "You did that yourself. I just made sure the truth came out." He had nothing to say to that. I pulled a card from my purse, contact information for the rehabilitation program the nonprofit ran for people struggling with accountability and ethical behavior. "If you ever want to actually learn what real lessons look like," I said, placing it on the counter beside him, "try growing up." I walked away without waiting for a response. I didn't need his acknowledgement or his apology. I didn't need anything from him at all anymore. That realization was the most freeing thing I'd ever felt. Outside, Patricia was waiting with Aiden, who ran into my arms the moment he saw me. "Mama. You were on stage." "I was, baby. Did you see?" "You were beautiful," he said seriously, and my heart melted completely. 3 years after Logan walked out of that hospital room, I stood in my new office with windows overlooking downtown. Aiden played quietly in the corner with his toy cars, humming to himself. My title was now Director of Family Advocacy Services. We'd helped over 200 families in the past year, mothers like I'd been, scared and alone, who just needed someone to believe in them. My relationship with my mother was slowly healing. She saw Aiden regularly now and was making real efforts to rebuild trust. My father had apologized too, stiffly but sincerely. Emma had become one of my strongest supporters. Logan was working a regular job somewhere, rebuilding from nothing. I heard through the grapevine he was in therapy, actually trying to become a better person. I hoped it was true. Not for my sake, for whoever might cross his path next. I looked at Aiden, now 4 years old, smart and kind and perfect. He'd never known his father, but he'd known love. So much love. Mama, look. He held up his toy car proudly. That's amazing, sweetheart. He wanted to teach me a lesson for keeping our baby, I thought, watching my son play. But keeping Aiden was the greatest lesson life ever gave me. He taught me I was stronger than I knew. Braver than I believed. And capable of building something beautiful from broken pieces. The revenge I'd wanted was nothing compared to this, living well, loving fiercely, and proving that broken families can raise whole children. I'd won in every way that mattered. And Logan? He'd learned his lesson after all. Just not the one he'd planned to teach.